25 years ago in Germany, sledders competed in the first two women bobsled world championships. Germany won gold, the U.S. got silver, and Switzerland took bronze. Those three countries are favorites this weekend in Lake Placid as women's bobsled celebrates its 25th anniversary. So with lots of action on the Mount Van Hoevenberg track coming up this weekend, we'll go to the starting line for an insider's view of this insanely fast sport. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Claxton Hepburn Medical Center, dedicated to providing patient care and regional services to the people of St. Lawrence County. ClaxtonHepburn.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Thursday, March 13th. First up, President Donald Trump's threats of tariffs on Canadian goods and comments about making it the 51st state are alienating Canadians. That's according to new traffic data released this week. As Kara Chapman reports, the North Country is already seeing a decline in the number of visitors from our northern neighbor.
Canada's Statistics Agency reported Monday that the number of Canadian residents returning from the U.S. by car declined by 23% in February compared to the year before. That indicates a good chunk of Canadians are cutting back on visits to the U.S. Plattsburgh Town Supervisor Michael Cashman says he wasn't surprised.
All you have to do is, drive around or walk around in the town center, and you are starting to see the decrease in Canadian license plates. And you're seeing the reduction at the mall, you're seeing a reduction at the box stores, but you're also seeing it in reduction of places like hotels and restaurants and small business shops. It's most concerning.
It's the second month in a row that Canadian return trips have declined, though January's change was much lower, about 1%. Up until this year, Canadian traffic hadn't seen any year-over-year decline since March of 2021, still during the COVID-19 pandemic. This movement away from U.S. products and travel appears to be fueled by frustrations with President Donald Trump's administration. The president has made comments about Canada becoming the 51st state and threatened to impose 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods. Cashman says the decrease in Canadian traffic is causing a lot of sadness and anxiety in the Plattsburgh area. He says restaurants and small businesses rely on Canadian customers, and tourism fuels sales tax revenue, which is a big deal for the town itself.
Is that the town of Plattsburgh is preparing budgetarily to position ourselves like we did during COVID, reducing costs. We already use a modified zero-based budget process already, but we're going to take a very conservative approach.
That caution and the tariffs are impacting the town's development plans. That includes the Battlefield Memorial Gateway, a veterans park the town hopes to have ready in time for the country's semi-quincentennial next year. There's been a lot of back and forth about the tariffs in recent days. The Trump administration officially implemented them early last week, then created temporary exemptions 2 days later. This week, Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on energy exports to the U.S., but backed down after Washington threatened to double new tariffs on Canadian metals. Cashman says he's focused on preserving the relationship with Canadians by keeping in touch with his local government counterparts across the border. He says the message for everyone is that Canadians are not the enemy.
One day there will be a change. Change is the only thing that's consistent in the world. But we need to make sure that we can protect the relationship and just know that, I stand united with Canada in our frustration and anxiety because we're both in the impact zone.
For now, the threat of 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods continues to loom and test the bond between North Country and Canadian communities. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio, Plattsburgh.
U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer is calling on the federal government to restore weather data collection in New York. The National Weather Service recently suspended the launch of a weather balloon in Albany. It captures atmospheric data to inform forecasts. Cornell climate science professor Toby Alt says without that data, New Yorkers' weather forecasts could become less reliable.
So the next time you look at your phone and check the weather app, you're not going to be able to feel as confident that it's going to be right because the data going into it is going to be more sparse and of lower quality.
The National Weather Service says it suspended the balloon launch due to a lack of staff. This comes after the Trump administration called for sweeping cuts to the federal workforce, including in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which houses the National Weather Service. The The best bobsled and skeleton athletes in the world are in Lake Placid right now. The Olympic Village is hosting world championship races for the two sliding sports. There were races last weekend and more tomorrow and Saturday. Our Adirondack reporter Emily Russell reports on the strength and the skill on display in Lake Placid.
Blink and you might just miss it. Bobsledding is a sport that happens fast, especially when you're watching in person. I'm at the starting line of the women's monobob race, an event that features one athlete per bobsled. Four-time Olympian Alana Myers-Taylor steps up to the starting line. She's in a navy bodysuit and a black helmet that says USA on the top. Myers-Taylor pulls down her helmet's visor, grabs onto the back of the bobsled, and begins to push. She sprints down the ice, and seconds later, she's tucking her body tightly into the bobsled. And then she's gone, out of sight around the first curve of the track. A bunch of athletes are gathered up here by the starting line, including Charlotte Ross. She competes for Team Canada. I ask her what it's like to go barreling down the track.
It feels like you're in a bus with no seatbelt that's just been rolled off the side of a mountain.
Ross is from Ottawa. She's what's known as a brakeman. So in the two-person bobsled race, Ross sits in the back with her head tucked down and her hands on the brakes.
You can't see anything. You're going anywhere from 130 to 150 kilometers per hour. It's terrifying, but the adrenaline is unmatched.
More than 300 athletes from nearly 40 countries are here in Lake Placid. The World Championship event features both bobsled and skeleton races. That's the sport where athletes lie headfirst on a flat, open sled with no brakes. Lisa Tucker is in town watching her stepson, Nick Tucker, who's a skeleton racer, reaching speeds of up to 80 miles an hour.
We bought him his first helmet. That was about the best we could do.
Lisa and her husband Avery travel up to Lake Placid from Maryland every time Tucker races here.
He is very committed to what he's doing. And, we kind of live vicariously, I guess, through him now.
Like many athletes here, their son wasn't always a professional slider. He played football in college. Alana Myers-Taylor, the bobsledder at the start of the story, she played professional softball. And Keisha Love, who's up next in the monobob event, was a Division I track star in college. She was a top-tier sprinter. Sprinting is a big part of this sport, but so is the strength needed to push the 300-pound sled. That's where Maggie McCrudden comes in. She's the food and nutrition dietitian at the Lake Placid Olympic and Paralympic Training Center.
These athletes are primarily muscle, so they need a lot of quick energy to get that sled to full speed.
McCrudden says eating the right food at the right time during events like this can make a big difference.
When they work hard, they're burning a lot of calories, and we need to replenish that and make sure that after their races, they're getting enough protein and carbs and fat to get ready for that next race that's coming up pretty soon.
In women's monobob, the athletes race down the track 4 times over 2 days. Those times are added up, and the athlete with the lowest total time wins.
Now it's only a tenth of a second. Monobob racing's going to be close. Here she comes.
After her second run, American Keisha Love is sitting in first place. In an interview with the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation, Love says she wasn't expecting to be in the top spot, especially considering how tough the track is in Lake Placid.
Yeah, it's extremely challenging, but for me, it's a track I learned on. So I have this love-hate relationship with it. It's one of the hardest tracks in the world, which I love the taboo behind that.
Love's fourth and final run down the track is her fastest. She wins a gold medal, and her teammate Alana Myers-Taylor takes bronze.
The leader from the very first heat held her nerve and kept up her speed.
As Love crosses the finish line, she throws her arms up in the air, officially a world champion. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio.
Great bobsled and skeleton photos from the track at ncpr.org. We have more news there all the time. Of course, ncpr.org. Music today by Tim Ellifritz of Johnsburg and Danny Thomas of Canton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.